So I'll just introduce myself, and then I think as each of us talk, we'll also be able to give individual intros. My name's Cheryl. I live in Vermont. I've worked with AFT now about 2.5 years. I've been working with farmers for over 20 years now. And I also graze cattle. I've had a stint with sheep. Last session, we were talking all about economics. I've done the Ranching for Profit program a couple of times. And for me, I do what I do because I really like working with farmers and helping people solve problems on their farms. So kind of back to the topic at hand of like, how do we get more out of these pastures that we're grazing? We get questions a lot from folks about, sometimes people are looking for silver bullets, right? Like, what's the thing I could plant? What's the thing I could do that's like going to solve all these problems? And usually it's more complex than that. Sometimes we go out to a pasture and it's like, well, the first thing we can see is, even sometimes without a soil test, is, hey, this is depleted of nutrients, right? Or like, oh, maybe the pH is way off here. And so, we always have an opportunity to kind of bring back like basic agronomy, right? And I think it's a topic that like actually never gets old and is always worth revisiting. I also think that there's a lot of gurus out there, and I like to see the big gurus out on the speaking circuit, right? In the soil health world, in the grazing world. And they'll tell you things like, well, if you're doing it right, you don't have to do anything. The animals will take care of it, right? We've heard this. And I just don't think that's true necessarily. Especially we're in like high rainfall environments here. We're not in brittle environments. Like it's different, right? And so sometimes we have to apply amendments. Sometimes we have to put seed down. That's not a failure. It doesn't mean we did a shitty job because we have to go put on lime, right? It's just, we operate in the climate that we're in. Okay, so really quick, I just want to scooch over here for a minute. I know the people online can't see this, but I will at least say it out loud, right? And this is just to kind of lay some foundation before we really get going and dive in. When we think about like renovating a pasture, right? Like, what are some reasons we do it, right? Well, sometimes there's low productivity. Well, hand in hand with that, we want to think about that fertility, right? So we'd want to see, if we're working with a farmer, like, well, let's see what those soil tests are. What are those recommendations? So it's not just about seed, okay? What about, there's low density, there's bare soil, maybe things have died out over time. This species has shifted, right? And sometimes that happens, like I've seen that at my own place after a really wet year, right? All of a sudden I'm like, whoa, where did all this canary grass come from? Things start to shift, that certain species die out. We get undesirables, we have low diversity. Now, some of this could be management induced, right? Are you overstocked? Are you overgrazing, right? Is the fertility poor? Let's try to fix these things simultaneously or before we go spend a lot of money on seed, right? So how are we going to do it? There's different ways to do it. We can do full-on tillage and renovation, right? Well, it's expensive, but it's really effective. We can do things like interseeding, right? There's all kind of conservation districts have no-till drills and things like that. And then there's always frost seeding, right? So they all have their pluses and negatives, right? The full bore, right? Yes, we have an opportunity to put nutrients on it. It's effective, but there's a lot of risk involved. It's a high cost, right? The thing about interseeding, if you're drilling into a sod, there's a lot of competition there. We don't always see a lot of success unless you're going into a pretty weak stand, right? Or something that's really has a lot of bare soil exposed. Frost seeding is cheap, relatively speaking. You don't necessarily need specialized equipment. You can buy one of those like cheap little bag, broadcast seeders, but it can be pretty variable. It's time sensitive, etc. So there's different rates of seed you need to do these, right? And these will be like in your seed catalogs, 15 to 25 pounds an acre to do the full renovation. With interseeding, you're at like 8 to 10 pounds to the acre. Frost seeding, 5 to 8 pounds to the acre. Typically, people frost seed legumes. I've done grasses, certain grasses, some work, some don't. There's some forbs that you can try frost seeding. So, you have opportunities and choices there. Jenny's going to talk more about seed quality, pure live seed. We'll get into that. So we'll talk about like, how much do you actually need to put down to get the 5 to 8 pounds to the acre? Okay, so let's jump ahead over here. Oh, So we're going to get to this, but just to kind of set up, we want to think about varieties. We want to think about the quality of the seed. And then Jenny's going to show us pure live seed calculation. The only thing I want to say about this is one of those things like you get what you pay for. In a lot of cases, like this would be the time to spend the money on the good seed and the tried and true varieties. Okay, so before we get into talking about seed and what we're going to plant, it's really helpful to kind of, I know it's might be hard to read, but what's out there, right? These are we're in a cool season, typically perennial environment, right? So we've got things on here like orchard grass, perennial ryegrass, Kentucky bluegrass, meadow fescue, timothy, even quackgrass, reed canary, brome, and tall fescue. That's not an exhaustive list, but these are kind of your most common. We've got red clover, ladino clover, trefoil, sometimes alfalfa, although I don't see that a lot in pastures. Forbs are things that are like your broadleaf plants. They tend to be taprooted. We'll talk about them more. Dandelion, plantain, forage chicory, even burdocks when they're in the vegetative state. Animals like to eat them, right? There's something there. We're going to dive into a little bit about the warm season grasses, things like sorghum, Sudan, and millet. We get asked questions about them all the time, so we thought it was worth mentioning. And then we see people doing interesting things with things like triticale and cover crops or, other winter grains, for example. Okay, so who here feels super confident IDing things? Good. Who feels super confident identifying like legumes? Yeah, we know those. Okay, who feels super confident identifying the grasses when they have their seed heads on them? Yeah, okay. And what about when they're in a vegetative? Okay, so we got a couple. Okay, well, you don't have. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. Give him at least a chocolate or something, right? Okay. Great. So I think this is like there's some, what I wanted to mention actually is there's resources out there, right? It just takes practice, right? And a lot of these grasses in particular, they'll have some kind of defining characteristic that makes them easy to identify. So I'm going to give a plug, and we're going to give away 2 of these at the end. This is Sarah Flack's book. You probably saw her. She was in the big room selling these. There's a chapter in here, Common Pasture Plants. And what I really like about it is it's a great reference, right? If you want to look something up like, oh, brome grass. What should I know about brome grass? Oh, slow to establish. It spreads by rhizomes. Great. Okay, good to know. What about festuloleum? Oh, well, it's short-lived. These are all helpful things to know if you're going to seed something, right? You want to know, like, well, what am I putting out there? Because we have different plant morphologies and we want to know like which ones fall into which categories. So if I go like do a new seeding on a pasture and I plant all bunch grasses, what's going to happen? I'm going to have all these spaces in between all the plants. I don't want that. I want a giant solar panel carpet, right? So I'm going to want a combination of things. So I might say, okay, well, there's going to be some species on here that I might want, but I want to combine that with some sod forming grasses, right? So we've got 2 different growth habits, and these spread by lateral stems or they spread by rhizomes, right? And so having that combination is like, okay, well, now we're starting to get more soil coverage. And then we think about, we're going to add some diversity. We're going to get some legumes in there. Okay, well, why is that? Well, these are going to provide things that the grasses aren't providing us, right? And we can choose from things like trefoil, right? Or red clover, white clover. Not talking about white clover that creeps and grows along the ground and doesn't really amount to anything. It's more the New Zealand species. They grow more in an upright habit. Does anyone know why you might want to have both red and white clover in your pasture? Not just one? Anyone? What's that? Yeah, and so, right, the more diversity, the better. Like something's going to maybe do well when something else isn't. Or like red clover, it's short-lived. It doesn't last a long time unless you have a system where it can reseed itself. The white clover, it's gonna it can winter kill sometimes, right? So it lasts longer, but if you have a really hard winter with no snow, it might not persist. So, the more diversity, the better. And I just, to kind of, I don't dare mess this up, but if we go back for a minute to here, right? So when we think about that diversity, like what's so nice about this is you've got like all different kind of leaf types, and you've also got like all these layers of canopy. So if you think of like the solar panel, it's effectively what this is. You can be really efficient at capturing solar energy versus imagine just a pasture that's like the standard bluegrass white clover. There's not much there, right? There's not much layering to that. So, and with what I just showed you too, you're going to have diversity of roots under the ground, right? And so like these prairie systems, right? Like we're trying to mimic, right? We talked before about like being in sync with nature, right? And so these forbs are really great because they're often tap rooted. And so what do those do? They're going to go down way deeper in the soil profile, right? And they pull up minerals. And so a lot of times when you test these, they test really high in mineral, they have great mineral nutrition. So they're kind of all playing a role together. A lot of those grasses, especially the spreading ones, are going to have really like fibrous roots, right? So we want to see as much diversity under the ground as we have in the canopy.
Oh, that's me. All right. I'm working hard to pass out some things to everybody. So, disclaimer, you see like red arrow asterisks at the bottom. We are not here to promote or endorse any one particular seed company, but what we will say is that we will absolutely promote certified seed. And the reason for that, and I'm sorry if I can ask one of my colleagues to finish this side, they're done in sets.
No, we're not here to represent any single company, although Barenbrug is the world leader in grass genetics.
I'll do it after you.
Okay. But what we are, thank you, Caleb, for adding that. Maybe I said it wrong. I was multitasking, handing out things, not thinking. But what we will say is that certified seed is really worth it. It's been tested. It's free of any prohibitive noxious weeds that are in it. It meets seed standards. It meets purity standards. So these are really important things, and it meets germination standards, because if you, whatever method you decide, full, interseeding through no-till drills, or frost seeding, you want to make sure that the seed you have purchased is going to do the job that you want it to do. Especially if you talk about full tillage, right? You may be doing things like multiple tilling to get to your seed bed to be prepared. You may invest some time in rock picking. You are going to put labor hours on that. You certainly don't want to skimp out, buy cheap seed, and have weeds and everything else that you don't want, or a germination rate that is less than you were expecting. So remember, we tailor these presentations for people who might be on a broad spectrum. So we are going to spend some time talking about Pure Life seeds. So if you already know it, just hang out and listen and maybe glean something a little bit different, or a formula that you haven't seen before. So on the back page, I think it's the very last one I gave you on your set, you have a seed calculation tool that you can use to insert your own numbers. So this happens to be an actual seed tag for perennial ryegrass, and the variety is Remington. And so you have your Pure Life seed, which is 99.86%. We're going to make everything a decimal, so we're going to move the decimal 2 places over to the left. Over on the right, and remember, seed tags are all structured differently, but on this one, your germination is 93%. So we're going to make it a decimal and roll it over to the left. And we're multiplying those two numbers. This number right here, so there's essentially 93% of the bag, right? And this is a 50-pound bag. It's saying that 93% of what's inside that bag is Pure Live seeds. So you should already have red flags going off that not every bag is 100%. So it's not a one-to-one correlation here. Then you can take that Pure Live seed number, bring it down to your next formula, and let's say the recommended rate, whatever it is. So Cheryl gave some recommended pounds per acre. Let's say it's 45 pounds per acre. We're going to divide that by our pure life seed. This number is really important. 48.45 pounds is what is that bag, remember, was 50 pounds. But this is telling me that I need 48.45 bulk pounds to seed my pasture or whatever you're seeding. And then finally, I just add that last calculation line to make sure that you're buying the right number of bags, right? You need to be prepared ahead of time. This isn't something that you should go, hey, it's September 1st. I think I want to reseed my pasture. And then you call up your list of, we have some catalogs that we gave you as samples. You might call one of them up and they're like, no, we're sold out. We're sold out. So this is something that you really should be thinking about at the beginning of your growing season to kind of have an idea about what you might want to put in that pasture.
Yeah, I mean, like 6 months is not too far ahead to be thinking about securing supply.
Correct. Thank you, Caleb. All right, so we're going to try one on your own. So this is an Alice White Clover seed tag. It's an actual seed tag purchased in 2025. The bag is 25 pounds total. I'm telling you that the recommended rate per acre is 4 pounds per acre, and that we're going to do 5 acres of seed. So take a second on a scrap paper. Heck, use your one that you wrote your name on for the future raffle. Write on the paper that we got, and see what you come out with for your total bulk pounds per acre. Remember, make it a decimal. What do you need, Charlotte?
Just to better advise
Well, can you interpret the germination rate 80, was it 86 plus 5?
Yep, this is actually 85. So when you're doing the germination rate, here you see in your equation, I've helped you out. It's always germination plus hard.
What does that mean?
So you're taking the germination rate of 85% and adding it to the 5% of hard seed. So you actually have a 90% germination rate. And so I don't know why they separate it, because some bags don't, and you know that it has hard seed in it. It's just whatever manufacturer, how it's sending it to you. Sometimes it will actually show that on the seed tag, how it's done it. On the particular Alice White one I showed, it has it separate, but I have other seed tags that actually show it together. So be mindful.
Hard seed is seed that is alive, but is not going to germinate right away. It'll hang out decades in some cases before it finally germinates, but there's like nothing actually wrong with it.
So this is like a plug and go. I hope I made it simple enough that you can take numbers, any